Special operations night raids are very important for the U.S.-led campaign against the Taliban. The coalition's day-to-day commander said in an interview a day after Afghan President Hamid Karzai demanded an end to such practices. U.S. Army Lieutenant General Curtis Scaparotti, who heads the coalition's joint command that is running the war-fighting effort, told the Wall Street Journal that special operations forces allow them to put constant pressure across the entire insurgent network that they are going after, adding that the night raids are safe for the populace as well since they are done at night when there is very little civilian activity. General Scaparotti said that the U.S. and coalition special operations forces carry out hundreds of night raids a month targeting insurgent leaders, facilitators and bomb makers. General Scaparotti also said more time is needed to hand over all detainees to Afghan facilities, which the United Nations has recently criticized for abuse of prisoners. Karzai convened this week a traditional gathering of representatives from across the country known as Loya Jirga to discuss the planned deal, where he said the end to night raids, home searches and detentions by coalition troops as his condition for endorsing the pact. Up to 3 million people in Afghanistan are facing hunger, malnutrition and disease after a severe drought wiped out their crops and extreme winter weather risks cutting off their access to vital food aid, a group of aid agencies warned Friday. Poor rains earlier this year destroyed 80% of wheat crops in the country's north, northeast and west, leaving impoverished farming communities with little food to eat, said the 9 charities, which included Oxfam and Save the Children. With food prices almost doubling since last year, families are being forced to skip meals, borrow money or migrate, while access to life-saving aid is now in jeopardy as heavy snowfall well within weeks block roads and risk avalanches. Despite 14 of Afghanistan's 34 provinces being hit by the drought, an October emergency appeal by the United Nations for $142 million has only so far been 7% funded by international donors. Aid workers warn that if the international community does not respond and aid supplies are not stockpiled in affected areas, in the coming weeks, children are at risk of dying. Afghanistan's former interim minister on Thursday said efforts to bring the Taliban to the negotiating table had failed and warned that those who have renounced violence were not the main threat. Talking to an audience at the Center for Strategic and International Studies think tank in Washington, D.C., alluding to whether peace talks had produced results, Muhammad Hanif Atmar said that of around 30,000 insurgents, only 8% have reconciled so far and 99% of them are not from the southern part of Afghanistan. Atmar, interim minister between 2008 and 2010, and who personally held talks with the Taliban leaders during the time, said their strategy would continue to fail unless Pakistan reversed its policy of giving sanctuary to insurgents. He also said that many leaders of the Afghan Taliban had placed their families in Pakistan because they believed they were safer there. The United States has increasingly been looking for a negotiated end to the Afghan conflict, given that insurgency remains virulent more than 10 years after the September 11 attacks prompted American forces to invade the country. 4 Afghan children were killed on Friday when a bomb exploded as they played near their home in the country's tribal east, which borders Pakistan, officials said. The blast in Nangarhar province is the latest reminder of the high death toll suffered by civilians in the current war since the 2001 U.S.-led invasion ousted the Taliban from power. Ahmad Zia Abdulzai, spokesman for the governor of Nangarhar, said that 4 children were killed and 6 others wounded slightly as a result of roadside bomb explosion, which took place around 9:30 a.m. local time in the Behsud district, but the Interior Ministry said the explosion was caused by a mortar apparently left over from Afghanistan's decades of war. The Taliban insurgents use landmines to target Afghan and foreign forces, but civilians are often the victims. Afghan and NATO-led International Security Assistance Force captured several anti-government militants in the southern Helmand province on Thursday. A press release of the alliance said on Friday. The press release said that the multiple suspected insurgents were detained in Nawai Barakzai district after conducting the operation when the insurgent leaders were meeting at a compound in the area. The press release did not give more details. Taliban militants have not commented on the issue yet. A day earlier, 2 British soldiers were killed on Thursday when a roadside bomb hit their armored vehicle in southern Afghanistan, the country's defense ministry in London said. The 35-nation board of the UN nuclear watchdog said Friday to censure Iran over findings that it has sought to develop atom bombs after the 6 big powers overcame divisions on how to best deal with a defined Tehran. Iran showed no sign of backing down in the protracted dispute over its atomic activities, threatening to take legal action against the International Atomic Energy Agency for issuing a hard-hitting report about Tehran's nuclear program. Last week's IAEA report presented a stash of intelligence indicating that Iran has undertaken research and experiments geared to developing a nuclear weapons capability. Iran says it is enriching uranium, only a fuel for nuclear power plants, not nuclear weapons. It also has dismissed the details in the IAEA report obtained mainly from Western spy agencies as fabricated and accusing the IAEA of a pro-Western slant. The 6 powers spearheading diplomacy on Iran, which includes the United States, Russia, China, France, Britain, and Germany, this week ironed out a joint resolution in intense talks and submitted it to the board, a mix of industrialized and developing countries. Syrian troops shelled 2 northern villages overnight after an attack by army defectors on forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad. Local activists said Friday in the first reported use of a sustained shelling against the 8-month uprising. The assault came a day after the Arab League suspended Syria and gave it until the end of the week to comply with an Arab peace plan to end a crackdown on the revolt that has killed more than 3,500 people by a United Nations count, along with mostly peaceful street protesters demanding Assad's removal. An armed insurgency has emerged, prompting calls by opposition leaders for protesters to stick to non-violence in face of an escalating crackdown. 8 villagers were injured overnight when tank shells and heavy mortars fell for 3 hours on Taj Minaj and Marshamshe and surrounding farmland. The activists said the official news agencies said troops carried out a qualitative operation in the region, arresting 58 wanted people and seizing rifles and bomb detonators. Scores of Occupy Wall Street protesters have been arrested across the United States after they attempted to mark 2 months since the movement against alleged corporate greed began. In New York City, police arrested at least 177 protesters on Thursday after they refused to end a blockade of a street intersection in the city's financial district. The rally, which began with a coordinated effort to shut down the stock exchange, grew into several thousand strong later in the day as the standard workday ended and unions joined a march across the Brooklyn Bridge, where last month more than 700 people were arrested. Protesters said they are upset that billions of dollars in bailouts given to banks during the recession allowed a return to huge profits, while average Americans have had no relief from high unemployment and a struggling economy. Dozens more demonstrators were held by police in Las Vegas, Nevada, and St. Louis, Missouri, while smaller protests were held in Denver, Colorado, and Washington, D.C. And that U.S. President Barack Obama met with leaders of Association of Southeast Asia Nations on Friday in Bali to strengthen ties with the region. Obama is the first U.S. president to attend this summit meeting, which groups 10 Southeast Asian countries, including Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Brunei, Philippines, Thailand, and Myanmar. China is vying with the United States for influence in Indonesia and Southeast Asia in general, the site of strategic sea lanes and and resources that it needs to power its economy, and the participation of Obama in the regional forum comes at a time when the region has started to show concern over the growing competition. Obama has said the increased focus on the Asia-Pacific region was essential for America's economic future, a point he emphasized on Friday. A first step in extending the United States military reach into Southeast Asia will see U.S. Marines, naval ships, and aircraft deployed to northern Australia from 2012. That's all for now. Thanks for joining us.